Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's recorded webinar. The Institution of Engineering and Technology 18th edition Wiring Regulations launch. I'm David Pye, one of the technical advisors for building services, and I'm joined by colleagues from Sittingills and the IET, who I will introduce shortly. Let's have a look at the agenda. So, the contents of the webinar: we will look at the Sittingills and IET collaboration. We will introduce 7671 2018. We will look at the impact of the 18th edition changes on our assessments, an overview of the content of BS 7671 2018. We'll discuss the support available and then answer some of your questions. So the Sittingills and IET collaboration. We've been working together for the production of the e-learning courses to help training providers with the delivery of the new qualification. We've been working together to demonstrate our joint commitment to the skills to the electrical technical sector and make sure that the electrical professionals are trained to the highest possible standards within the industry. Our presenters for today will be Peter Tanner, Lead Technical Consultant at Sittingills and member of the JPEL 64, responsible for producing BS 7671. We're also joined by Stephen Devine, the IET Secretary, Subcommittee C member of JPEL 64, responsible for producing BS 7671. Okay, so I'll pass you over to my colleagues to discuss this.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Stephen Devine, and thank you for the introduction. I'm the Secretary on JPEL 64 Subcommittee C, which is responsible for shock protection, and I'm a Senior Engineer with the IET. So what is the 18th edition? Well, since 1882, when street lighting became popular, there have been requirements for electrical installations in the UK. The primary purpose of the wiring regulations is so that all electrical installations in the UK meet a minimum safety requirement. The first edition of the wiring regulations was published over 130 years ago in 1882, and it consisted of a handful of pages, and now we are looking at the launch of the 18th edition, which is substantially heavier. And this proportionately reflects how we use electricity and how it's crept into every aspect of our lives over the last century. Now, the publication is the national standard for electrical installations. The 18th edition, which is known as BS 7671 2018, is due to be published in July, and this will supersede the current edition, the 17th Third Amendment. At the IET, we urge all people working in the electrical industry to be aware of these changes before the new regulations come into place, so that they are in full understanding of the current requirements. Peter, would you like to sort of take us just on some of the key dates that we're looking at here for?
Yes, Stephen. Yeah, some key dates to come. 2nd of July 2018, that's the publication date for BS 7671. You can advance book copies through the IET of the publication. They are taking bookings from advanced bookings, or advanced orders is what I should say, sorry, for the publication. And throughout July and August, the IET will be bringing out the updated guidance notes 1 to 8, as well as the electrician's guide to the building regulations and the code of practice for the installation of electric vehicle charging equipment. So that will all be coming out after the publication of BS 7671. And July 18 to the 31st of December 2018, both versions of BS 7671 will be current. So you can carry out work to the 17th edition and certificate work and even design, providing that the design of that installation is completed before the 1st of January 2019. So come the 1st of January 2019, the 17th edition will no longer be current, and the 18th edition will take over as the sole current publication. And all work designed from that point onwards would need to comply with the 18th edition. Any work that's being undertaken throughout that overlap period, as long as the design has been carried out before that, it may be finished and verified to the 17th edition. But ideally, any work that's sort of been undertaken leading up to that point should be really to the 18th edition.
That's right. And just quickly back to that point about the availability of both standards during that 6-month period. It's important to remember that if you start your design and your installation to the 17th Third Amendment, then that entire installation must comply with the 17th Third Amendment. If you do decide to use the 18th, which is absolutely fine after the publication, the entire installation must comply with the 18th edition. You can't cherry pick which regulations you like from either edition. You have to start and finish under compliance with one particular edition.
Now, Stephen knows as well as I do, even though the 18th edition hasn't hit the bookshelves yet, JPR 64 are already working on Amendment 1. Don't panic, it's not going to be out on July the 3rd. It takes a long time to put these amendments together. There are rules of BS0. BS0 is the standard for standards, and the rules of BS0 say that there can only be 2 amendments to an edition before that edition changes. So all you'll see is Amendment 1 and an Amendment 2, and then the book has to become the 19th edition. So with a 3 to 5 year programme for amendments, you can expect to see the 19th edition around about 9 to 15 years' time. So now we'll look at an overview of BSM 671. And you'll see that firstly there's some new items introduced into the definitions. We have items like departure. It's a term we've been using for a long time, but it's only really just come in as a definition, something we use a lot when we're carrying out inspection testing, and the same for non-compliance. I'm glad to see partial selectivity is coming, because when it came to discrimination, and I always got my words mixed up, so seeing selectivity come in and replacing that term discrimination, I'm quite pleased to see that.
So you no longer get confused with diversity and
diversity,
discrimination.
Discrimination, not a problem anymore.
Many of these terms in the regulations, I get mixed up with it. I work with it 24/7. Yeah, so there are some changes to definitions there. A new chapter 41 was published at European level, and within the UK we contribute a lot to the European regulations, and we try to align with them as best we can, obviously taking in considerations on a national level. So the requirements for bonding may be omitted where metallic pipes have an insulating sections at the point of entry. This isn't really something new. It's in relation to what is deemed as an extraneous conductive part, and now some services having insulated inserts may not meet all of those requirements to be deemed an extraneous conductive part.
I think Steve will agree that with a lot of smart metering going in a lot of properties, that's the point where a lot of those gas companies are looking at their metering and looking at their pipe work as it comes into a building. And a lot where smart metering is being installed, you're getting plastic sections going in to installations at that point. So it's just clarifying the requirements for bonding in those buildings where there is a insulated section at the point of entry and any metallic surfaces.
That's absolutely right. But be aware, if it's extraneous, you still need to bond it.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at circuits with luminaires and domestic installations now requiring additional protection. RCDs have been on the market for a long time now, and they're obviously far cheaper than they used to be. So it's reasonable to assume that in the future and the way that we're moving, we'll be using RCDs in more and more environments. So 419, some disconnection times, why they're not feasible. We're looking at the introduction of ARC fault detection devices. Now, these are a recommendation, so as I'm sure you'll understand, Peter, if you have a recommendation, it's not a requirement, is it?
Yeah, it's fair to say that, you know, even though there's a regulation number attached to all these, the wording is quite important. Consideration shall be given to, and consideration means it's not a requirement. It's a prompt. It's a way of looking at the safety of the installation. And in this case, with arc fault detection devices, it is a consideration, and there's some suggestions of where arc fault detection devices would be appropriate, and these include places like rented accommodation.
Is this a little bit like deja vu, Peter? Chapter 46.
Absolutely. Those of you who remember the 16th edition will remember chapter 46, which disappeared in the 17th edition. The thought was to keep isolation and switching nice and tidy and put it all into one chapter, which became chapter 3. But now it's seen that some of those general requirements for safety need to come back out into chapter 46 to make it quite clear what the requirements are for isolation and switching, rather than the devices that are used.
That's right, and I think chapter 53 was becoming quite a heavy chapter, and with the introduction of a lot of new devices for isolation, switching and monitoring on the market, it just seemed it seems more appropriate to pull it out and separate the two aspects.
Absolutely, otherwise some of the requirements get lost.
Yeah. So new chapter 64, looking at replacing the requirements of 61 and 63. There's some subtle changes there, but essentially the chapter 61 and 63 have been pulled into chapter 64.
So what we see now is when we're looking at the requirements for initial verification, which is now chapter 64, instead of having the requirements for how to do the inspection testing and then the reporting in a separate chapter, all the reporting or certification is now all in the same section, so it's nice and clear throughout that section. And the same applies when it comes to periodic inspection and testing. In the new chapter 65, the requirements that were in chapter 62 and 63 have now been merged into one chapter, with some subtle changes as well, such as when we think about the initial verification of electrical installations, the way that tests are carried out for insulation resistance patch by changes in test voltage. So there's some subtle changes in there, as well as some subtle changes to the test sequence.
Now we'll look at some of the introductions into part 7. We have new section 730, requirements for onshore electrical onshore units, electrical shore connections for inland navigation vessels. Now, most people who deal with Part 7s will know that there's a lot of specialised areas there. So there are additional requirements, additional considerations over and above the requirements within other parts of BS 767 that need to be taken into consideration. And this can be due to the harsher environments, increased risk of electric shock. We also have a new Appendix 17, Energy Efficiency. Now, many of you will have been aware of the draft for public comment or consultation that was available last year, and would have seen Part 8. Now, it doesn't look like that Part 8 is going to be part of 767 anymore. However, attention needs to be drawn to the need for energy efficient installations, just with the way the use of electricity is increasing across the UK, and also looking at the international standards. There are IC and HC documents.
Yeah, there's a lot of useful information in Appendix 17, but that's exactly what it is. It is information about designing installations to be energy efficient, and it was felt through the DPC process that the inclusion of this section as a Part 8 and making it a requirement, as it doesn't really have an effect on the fundamental principles for safety, then it's best as an information-only appendix, and that's where Appendix 17 now sits.
So, Peter, you're obviously aware that Part 8 is still available to purchase.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more detail than what's contained in Appendix 17. And there is, from the IET, some codes of practice available for the design of energy efficiency installations.
Okay, so if you're working in that area, it's still a standard that will need to be referred to if you're looking at energy efficient installations. Okay, so new content for Appendix 14 for the determination of prospective fault current. Again, quite subtle changes there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you remember, there was a lot of information in there to do with the adjustment of ZS values. So when we're thinking about the maximum ZS values of tables 41.2, 3 and 4 in chapter 41, that formula about the 0.8 factor has now moved to Appendix 3. And what we see in here now is some new information about the calculation of prospective full current for installations, and some guidance on the testing of prospective full current, and a lot of that geared towards three-phase installations.
So we have some changes to the definitions and the removal of wording such as ensure. Now, if you're an installer, can you insure anything?
No, absolutely you can't. Designers, some of the wording that was used in the fundamental principles of design was the designer must ensure. But obviously, once the designer's designed the installation, it's up to the installer to install it to the designer's requirements. Can the designer ensure that?
No, absolutely not. So
it's just not possible.
Yeah.
So wording has to change. You know, technology moves on, but so does the language as well.
Exactly. So we have chapter 41. So there's been some changes in here, some corrections on the international and European level as well. So with regards to disconnection times, changes to the ratings of socket outlets requiring additional protection, and just a general tidy up of chapter 41, looking at the structure of the international and European documents as well. Our standard in the UK has been around, like I say, for more than 130 years, and it's developed over that time, and with a more global look at standards and the way that we use equipment and materials, we've had to take it from a slightly different approach and look at getting a more harmonised document.
So currently socket outlets with a rating up to 20 amp require additional protection. That's moving up to 32 amps. Chapter 44, we've got some changes here. This is a very specialised area, so you're aware. The section 443 to do with transient over voltage to do with lightning strikes. They brought in a new approach of calculated risk level to determine whether over voltage protection is required due to lightning strikes. But as I said, very specialised area. Very useful mapping there if you're thinking about buying a house in the UK. Tells you where there's a lot of thunderstorms. Section 444. Changes to separation distances, where we've got electromagnetic interference as an issue. There's been introductions to some new tables to do with separating low voltage circuits to the data circuits or any circuit vulnerable to EMI.
Look at chapter 51, RCD test notice for quarterly test frequencies changed to 6 monthly. Peter, I'm sure you test your RCD every 3 months.
Oh, if not earlier than that.
Yeah.
You know, it's something I do all the time. Not.
So there may be a bit more of a prompt for 6 monthly checks, such as the clocks going forward, the clocks going back, and also it's the robustness of the equipment improves over years. So, but do make sure you urge people to check those RCDs regularly.
Now, some of you might remember that in the 17th edition Amendment 3, the requirements came in for adequate support to stop the premature collapse of wiring systems in escape routes. That's now been extended to all parts of the wiring system.
Yeah, it was becoming increasingly difficult to define what an escape route was. Certainly some larger buildings, so it was, I think, a good move that it was all-encompassing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chapter 53, maximum RA information for RCDs, now extending to 20 amps, up to 20,000 milliamps, as well as a lot of other changes and additions relating to SPDs used for lightning strikes, and a general tidy up of 53.
Yeah, definitely. It was a chapter that was getting really big. In fact, it has got bigger, especially with the surge protection devices. But actually, some really useful changes in there. This new table to do with the RA values against RCDs is an extension of table 41.5 and gives a much broader value of RCDs covered there, not just up to 500 milliamps. And also, there's quite a lot of new information gone in to do with selectivity, especially a new annex in chapter 53, which goes through the process of determining selectivity. Very useful section there.
Yeah, a lot of work went into that annex, so hopefully the industry gets some good use out of it.
Absolutely, I think it's a really good information.
Chapter 54, foundation earthing. This is something that's been floating around in other countries around the UK, around the world for quite some time. There is a proposal to introduce a requirement for foundation earthing to improve the earthing systems in the UK. However, the data that we have on this is limited, and we are currently, as in the IET and various other organisations, carrying out some research to get some actual realistic data on how these are going to affect earthing systems in the UK. So it's been recognised in the 18th edition, but watch this space, because there's a lot more work being done with this moving into the future.
In addition, Chapter 55, very small change here. It just brings in the need to consider fire protection on luminaires installed in decking. So it just highlights them that they've got to be to the correct product standard. We've also seen some changes in Part 6. Continuity of ring final circuits now comes under the umbrella of general continuity. So now we have a section to do with continuity of conductors as opposed to continuity of protective conductors, and ring final circuits fall under that. And as I alluded to earlier, there's been some changes to inspection and test values of insulation resistance testing. And it's now permissible, where unreasonable, to disconnect equipment during initial verification to test line neutral to earth only, so that's live conductors to earth only, and record those results. And we've also got, probably been a long time coming, the introduction of a requirement to carry out a line polarity test, whereas in previous editions it was just for the final circuits, but now a supply polarity test is now a requirement.
Okay. There are also many changes to installations in construction sites, caravan parks, extra low voltage lighting, floor and ceiling heating is now classed as all embedded heating. These are all things that are just evolving over time. Like the standard has been around for a long time, and we have experts from all these areas on the National Committee just helping us develop these areas so they're more suited for the practitioner and the designers.
And again, a lot of these changes to do with changes in technology and changes of external influences that really have an effect on those technologies. So we see Appendix 6, due to some of the subtle changes in Part 6 to do with inspection and testing. Then the schedule of the test results have changed to allow for this. So we have changes to test voltages must now be declared on the schedule of test results, as well as detail of any arc fault protection devices added to a circuit. Maximum ZSs now must be declared on that schedule of test results, not just the measured values, but the maximum permissible values, and the RCD residual current ratings are now included on as a separate column as well. So just going to have a quick look at how these assessments impact, or how Sitting Gills assessments are impacted by the changes. Now, of course, 2382.15, which was aligned to the 17th edition Amendment 3, will now be replaced by 2382.18, and that will be geared exactly to the 18th edition. So that assessment will be available from the 2nd of July. It will be a 60-item on-demand multiple choice test over the 2-hour period. So no change there, and it's still to very much the same test specification as well. Any centre currently running 2382.15 will get automatic approval, and any centre staff who wish to sit the examination at the centre, please be aware you must, before registering with the examination, you must ensure that you let your local quality office and your EQA know that you want to sit the examination. And invigilation, under current guidance, not just for this assessment, but invigilation must be undertaken by somebody not connected with that teaching department. So very strict rules there, but you are allowed to sit at your own centre, providing that the invigilator is not electrical, and providing that you have let your local quality office know about it, and let your EQA know about it. Now, the 18th edition, as I said, will be available from the 2nd of July. Based on the 18th edition, and it will be only a 60-item evolved test. There will be no short 30-item test like we saw with the introduction of the 17th edition. There's been a general agreement across all awarding organisations that that will not happen now. However, as a centre, you are able to design your delivery the way you want to. So if you want to just do an update for those who already have the 2382.15, then you can do that over a 1 day, half-day period. That's entirely up to you and up to the audience you have in front of you, or you can run it over the traditional 3 days. That's your decision, but the assessment will still be the same. 238-215 will not continue after the 1st of January 2019. That's where that will be switched off. So some key notes for the apprenticeship qualifications. Just to let you know that currently the 2357006 is based on the 17th edition, and that will continue until July 2019. And that's beyond the cut-off date for 17th edition as it stands, but that's extended because we don't expect apprentices midway through a course to change their edition of BS761. So that assessment will continue to run. The same with 535716, based on the 17th edition. That will continue up to July 2019. However, there is an alternative 008 assessment on 2357 or a 018 on 5357, and that will be based solely on the 18th edition. Make sure you get your registrations right, 006 or 008, based on what edition of the regulations they had. So make sure you sort your cohort out that they've got the right book for the right assessment. 006 and 016, as I said, will continue until July 19, but the new 008 and 018 will be available from the 2nd of July. Centre market assessments across the qualifications. There'll be dual marking schemes that will be available from July. In fact, it's starting to trickle out now, actually. There isn't a huge amount of assessments that are affected actually by it, but any assessment that is affected will have a dual answer in it. So it'll have a 17th edition answer and an 18th edition, just like the example shown there, that if you had to state the disconnection time, currently for a 230 volt, 45 amp socket outlet, on a TN installation, the answer would be 5 seconds currently in the 17th edition, but in the 18th that will be changed to 0.4. So to give you an example here of the impacts, you can see that some of the units are not impacted at all by the changes in the 18th edition. So health and safety, for example, and science, 211 and 602 assessments, no impact at all. We've still reviewed the banks just to make sure that there is no impact there. Some that are impacted, the 203, for example, on 2365. Now, what we've done with these is we've neutralised questions. So any candidate that sits with an on-site guide based on the 17th edition or the 18th edition from July will not be disadvantaged in any way. The questions will suit either edition, and that applies to any apprenticeship evolved test that is open book. Okay, so just make it clear. Questions will be neutralised for either edition, no matter what they're going with. Same with level 3 and any of the open book evolved tests there. Questions will be neutralised across the evolved tests. As you can see though, some of the assessments are not impacted at all. 802, as these assessments are written specifically for the end assessment dates. Don't panic if you're currently got a cohort doing June, July examinations. They will be to the 17th edition, but any assessment undertaken on the 2019 assessments, which will be April through to July in 2019, they will be based on the 18th edition. So to make that clear, they will be on the new 18th edition.
Lovely, thank you very much, gentlemen. Some very good and interesting information there. Well, you've heard all about the qualification changes and the changes to the wiring regulations. What I'll do now is I'll take you through some of the offers and options available to you as centres providing these qualifications. So, learning options for centres. We're offering a range of provision for delivery of these qualifications. We have the 238218 with a traditional registration. So you may recruit learners, deliver a course of learning, and then sit the assessment as normal. But in addition to this, there are several options available. As you can see on the screen there, 238228, registration, and IET Sitting Girls e-learning short course. So this is an independent additional course that a learner can sit as distance learning, or maybe in your centre using computers, This is 7 hours. You may add some learning onto that, so you may run it as a hybrid where you work with a learner, you ask them to complete some e-learning, they then come into the centre for 1 or 2 days or maybe a couple of evenings. This will be proportionate to the learning that that learner requires. You ask several times whether there are different assessments for different ranges of learning. No, there is one single assessment for all learners, whether they are new to the wiring regulations or whether they've got previous versions such as the 17. Everyone will take the same assessment to achieve the 18th edition. However, what we're suggesting is the learning is proportionate to how much learning they need to do. The 2382 38 there is the registration, the short course, along with the wiring regulations book and on-site guide. So that gives you the opportunity to purchase these and bundle them together as one registration cost. In addition to those we've just spoke about, there are several options available for you to purchase e-learning and several books and tutor packs from ourselves. So there's a list there. We have the e-learning short course, the e-learning long course, which may be more suitable for those learners without 17th edition and require some additional learning. We have the 18th edition wiring regulations book, the on-site guide, and there will be a traditional smart screen tutor pack. So this will include your traditional PowerPoints, worksheets, sample assessments, everything to support you to deliver this qualification. The e-learning short course will be available on SmartStream platform on a learner per license. The 3 sample assessment tests will be included as part of that license course. All elements can also be purchased as standalone items from the wall garden. Now there's several opportunities there. We have a dedicated email address, that's edition18@sittingills.com. If these packages are of interest to you, if you'd like to investigate further, if you're looking to purchase them or you're looking to purchase them en masse or bulk purchases, please follow up using that email address. So over to my colleague to introduce some of the publications.
You can see that the colour of the 18th edition is going to be a blue cover. But just want to draw your attention as well to the Student's Guide for the IET wiring regulations. Stephen, has that been well received?
It's been extremely well received. I think it was something that was missing from the educational sector of the electrical industry for quite some time. So, as you know, because you contributed quite significantly to the development of the book, it's really designed as a guide for those students, not just starting out in the industry, but to take them right through until they're achieved all their qualifications.
I think what the students find particularly good about the book is the language that's used, isn't it? Where if any student that picks up a copy of BSM 671 and tries to understand it, they're going to find that very difficult, aren't they?
Absolutely. The language that was used in the Student's Guide was designed for those who have no real significant prior knowledge of the electrical industry, the terminologies, and the types of installations that they'll come across in their career. So it's really focused on introducing those people into the electrical industry, all written in nice, easy to understand.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
So you're going to see that the Sitting Gills Joint Sitting Gills IET textbooks are going to be updated and revised. The level, what we call Book 1 now, rather than Level 2, that will be available from September this year, and it will be fully updated to the 18th edition. You'll also know TSC has gone through a complete remodel as well, because instead of having the many books across all qualifications, we're now using 2 books across all qualifications. So in Book 1, you'll be able to, it covers all of the content of 2365 Level 2, all the content of 802 Level 2, but also what we consider the Year 1 content of 5357, which is your health and safety, basic science, installation technology 004, the actual installation wiring systems 107 unit, and also communications in there. And then Book 2, which is due out around about October time, that will cover all Level 3, 2365 content and 802 content. And the advanced subjects in 5357, such as advanced sciences, very big chapter in there now to do with BSM 671, much more explanation, detailed explanation on the use of BS7671. And then you've got usual design, inspection and testing, and full diagnosis. One that's not listed up there as well is the at work or on-site unit, which is all to do with the information and planning and preparation as well.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think what's a really positive outcome of these changes is a learner now on a full-time course who progresses into employment and the apprenticeship won't have to go out and buy a separate book now. It's all contained within the same publication. Okay, so we've listened to a lot of information there, and we always want to make sure that you're aware of how you can contact us in future. So you've got a list on your screen now of the BSE team. There's a general building services at sittinggills.com email address, and there's a list of the members there, Celine Vidram, the industry manager, myself and Rob Mallender, technical advisors. We also have a Twitter feed. We use LinkedIn quite a lot. There's an email link there, so if you're receiving email updates, you may want to update your preferences. If not, if you can click on that link, and if you've ever been to one of our regional network meetings before, you'll know that we run these across the UK quite frequently. If you're interested in hosting some of those or attending some of those, there's a link there to all of our meetings across the UK. Some further support, we have a dedicated 18th edition webpage, so there's a link there where you can follow that up. And if you've got any queries at all on some of the resources, we have a direct sales at sittinggills.com. Okay, so questions now. We've covered all the content. We do have a couple of questions that have come through. We'll just answer some of the most common ones and then we'll close. So there's a couple of questions on automatic approval. Yes, if you're running these courses already, you will get automatic approval. If you haven't run previous qualifications or you're not a Sittingills Centre, on an FAQ document following this, we will share a link where you can access application to become one of our centres. A few questions around the e-learning. Does it have to be at distance e-learning only? No, you can run that as a hybrid of traditional teaching and e-learning. Can people do an update who've got the 17th edition already? Can it be an update exam, as we covered earlier? No, it's a single exam, but your learning may change. So maybe a shorter course. That's dependent on the centre to work with the learner, do a skill scan, and see what is the most appropriate length of learning for that particular learner.
What was the permitted material that's allowed in the 2382 18 examination? But just like 2382 15, it's just BS7671. On-site guys are not permitted. They're not going to do you any good taking them in there anyway. All the questions are based around the publication BS7671. So that's the only permitted material.
Okay, thank you. Just two more and then we can close. One of the questions Peter covered earlier. If you're looking to take and update your own skills to the 18th edition, it would be recommended that tutors on the course do that. You can either take that at an alternative centre. If you wish to take it at your own centre, you will have to notify your local quality office and your EQA, wait for approval, and then you can sit it in your own centre with a separate invigilator, as Peter mentioned, following the JCQ rules as normal, someone who's not involved in that delivery. Okay, I think that covers everything. Is there any further questions from any of the team?
No.
Well, just remains to say thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this webinar. We hope it's been useful. There are plenty of links there. If we haven't answered all your questions, please do follow those up. But thank you very much to our colleagues and guests today. Thank you very much from me, David Pye.
Thank you very much from me, Peter Tanner.
And thank you very much from me, Stephen Devine.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Goodbye.